Hello there, I'm Jimmy Vegas, and some of you may know me as the Unity tutorial guy who makes tutorials on his other channel with 150,000 subscribers. Yep, that one. I've made thousands upon thousands of tutorials over the last 11 years or so, teaching people how to make games. And in this video, I want to go through a little bit of a story time and tell you how I got to the point of being really into game development. There's a long story and tale to it, and if you don't know that I'm the Unity tutorial guy, then I guess this is eye-opening for you. So, strap yourselves in, it's story time with Jimmy. So it started in about 1990, when I was probably 5 or 6 years old, and my mum and dad got me a Sega Master System. Yep, they bought me a Sega Master System. I don't know whether it was for my birthday or whether it was for Christmas or whatever. But either way, I had one, I enjoyed it, and I absolutely loved it. A couple of years later, specifically for Christmas, I do remember it being Christmas, I got a Super Nintendo for Christmas, and my brother got a Sega Mega Drive, or Genesis for any Americans, Canadians among us. And this really was where I got into video games, and I absolutely adored playing Super Mario World. That was my go-to game. Obviously, my brother had Sonic the Hedgehog, and he had a couple of others, and we built our collection up over the coming year. We'd play each other's game consoles and enjoy them for whatever they were worth. But it was around that time where my dad kind of brought to the table the fact that he'd actually played video games before. And my dad does not play video games. He's no idea where to even begin. He kind of comes around to our house, and then my son tells him to sit down and shows him playing Grand Theft Auto, and my dad's like, what is this? I don't get it. But yeah, my dad used to play video games on his Spectrum ZX Plus 2. I think it was Plus 2 anyway. And he showed it to me one day, and if you don't know anything about that as a console, it was basically a keyboard and a tape deck, and you stick your tape in, it'd do all this crazy stuff, and you end up playing a game. Well, on there you could code in BASIC, that a language called BASIC. And I took it upon myself to kind of learn how to do this, and I created my own little games eventually. As time went on, things advanced, and I kind of moved away from that. I ended up going to high school, and I got a Nintendo 64, and I kind of fell out a little bit of that, and I forgot about, what I was able to code in BASIC. I think my dad still has that Spectrum. I'd have to check with him. But either way, as I got into high school a couple of years later, I became very immature. And as an immature person, I found it very funny to make fun of my teachers. And what I would used to do is create things like song titles for my teachers, and reference them. I think that was probably the beginning of my creative side coming out. But going back a little bit from them, I knew my creative side existed way before that, but it was around that time that I knew my creative side was coming out. So just to kind of backtrack a bit, I used to do drawings of levels and stuff after I'd got my Super Nintendo. And I'd draw levels and come up with designs and everything for video games. And obviously, because I was young, I didn't think much of it. And going back to high school, it got to a point as well where I say acquired because I don't really know how I actually got it. I acquired an engine called OHR RPG CE, and I do think it still exists today, but when I got it, it was a DOS-based engine. And what I eventually did was create a really silly game replicating our school buildings, and it was based around my geography teacher. So my geography teacher, his name was Mr. Marsden. And I created a game in this OHR RPG CE called The Legend of Marsden, just for fun, for jokes. And this was around the year 2000, probably a little bit after I played The Legend of Zelda, so you can see where the inspiration came from. Anyway, moving on from that, I actually created a second game, The Legend of Marsden 2, which was heavily inspired by Majora's Mask. So it was at this point I knew that I loved designing these games. I even tried making a third one, but by this time the joke was over. I'd moved on and I was in college. But being in college, it really occurred to me that I wanted to design video games for a living. And in college, at this point I had a PS2, I had a GameCube, and you could see how video games were evolving. At the end of college, I decided my project work would be based around video games. So I kind of put together a video game based on an anime that I'd been watching called Ranma, which, for anyone that knows, yeah, it's weird. Okay, look, but I'm not going to go into that. So at the end of college, 2 years, this was around 2003, I ended up going to Liverpool John Moores University to study game development. During my time when I was learning to develop games at Liverpool John Moores, I actually learned Dark Basic, which for anyone that knows is kind of like an advanced version of Basic, but it's not very good. I didn't particularly enjoy this because it was things that I didn't really want to learn. I didn't know what I wanted at that point, so it's hard to say where I could have gone. But I felt a bit disheartened by what was, essentially, so I eventually left the course not even halfway through. I then subsequently went to Bangor University in Wales and dropped out of that because that wasn't what I wanted either. And I only accumulated a little bit of student debt, but that's beside the point. Soon after that, I discovered RPG Maker. Now, RPG Maker, I think, does still exist today, and it effectively means that you can put together your own little game using sprites and a bit of, I can't remember the coding language it used, but I got to grips with that and I made a cool game. It was called Beyond Eternity. I do still have it somewhere, but whether it works in this day and age, I honestly don't know. I kind of put that together around about the year 2006, 2007. And soon after that, I kind of knew that I had to really get a job. So I had to kind of get money and get somewhere. So I fell out of game development again. But at this point, I'd already learned several different coding languages, not fully completely, but, you know, I knew the basics of several languages, so I knew I could pick up any other language quite easily. I always knew that in the back of my mind, I could be designing a game or music or programming or something. I love music as well, which is why it kind of is nice for me to cover all aspects. I love designing, I love music, I love coding. So for me, I feel like an all-rounder, whereas in the gaming industry, you'll find a lot of people focus on one specific area, whether it is programming, whether it is sound design, whether it is level design, marketing, whatever. A couple of years after that, I started noticing the rise of, how would you say, like not free game engines, but different types of game engines that you could use. And one of the engines that I started getting to grips with was Unity. And I kind of got into Unity when it was about version 4. Keep in mind, this was about 2010, 2011. And soon after that, I kind of knew that I wanted to use engines. So I started exploring different engines. I ended up trying out Unreal and CryEngine. I can use all three of those engines, Unity, Unreal and CryEngine. But I choose to teach Unity. But I'll get into that a little later on in the video. Now, it was at this point that I didn't really know how to use Unity, but I gravitated more towards that because I felt it was more friendly in terms of its user interface and how it existed. So I focused on that whilst keeping something like Unreal on the side. I haven't used CryEngine for a while, so I'm not quite sure what the state of it is right now, but I do still dabble in Unreal Engine, but I don't teach Unreal Engine because I don't feel strong enough in that, but I like to play with it. Anyway, a couple of years later, after I'd really got into Unity, it kind of occurred to me that, wow, I can actually make games now, and they're not as bad as what I thought they would be. But there are many people out there who can't use it, have no idea how to. And I figured, well, actually, wouldn't it be really cool if I showed people how to do it? And then let's fast forward 11 years, and here we are now with me, with a channel with 150-something thousand subscribers, and people learning how to create games every single day, thousands of people. So let's roll back 11 years. And I kind of evolved from there. And then Unity 5 came out, and I think that's when the Unity scene kind of exploded because of its accessibility, which was really, really good. And I still maintain to this day, the reason why Unity 5 existed is simply because Unreal Engine 4 existed, and Unity wanted to do one better. And this comes back to the idea of Xbox and PlayStation. So when Xbox released, it was great, but PlayStation 2 was on the scene. When PlayStation 3 released, Microsoft didn't want to call it Xbox 2 because it could seem inferior to, you know, people, I guess. But I suppose the idea is that if you called it Xbox 360, it would sound even cooler and more advanced than PS3. And I think that's why the naming convention of Xbox 360 existed and not Xbox 2. Which I think is the same philosophy of what Unity has done. Because if you look at Unity, Unreal Engine 5 came out, we'll say a couple of years ago, and then last year, Unity 6 came out. So it's like Unity wants to one-up every time. And I can guarantee that when they do release Unreal Engine 6, Unity will release Unity 7, just to kind of get that, not one-up, but it's a sad mentality to think of, but I think it's a marketing thing. Anyway, going back to game development, I kind of just knew at that point Unity would be my go-to engine. I've made countless games in Unity. I've made demos, I've made playtests, I've made proof of concepts that I do share with people and let people play. But going all the way back to 1990 when I got my first Master System, that is where this journey first began. And it's a cool journey to go on. You know, I really enjoyed that whole journey of learning, playing games. And all these games behind me, I've played most of them, and obviously they're a lot of inspiration for me. So you've got to look at yourself and know, well, what kind of games do I want to make? So if you're in the market for wanting to make a game, go check out my other channel. I suppose this is like one big 15-20 minute advertisement for my other channel. I don't know, whatever. But I'll leave it in the description if you want to go and have a look. But yeah, for an overall story, I thought it'd be kind of cool to talk about how I got into games, where I've been, and how I ended up where I am today. I don't really know where I'm going to end up in the next 5, 10, 15 years, but I do know that game development will be in my future one way or the other. Whether I take a break from development like I did in 2023, it'll always come back to me. It'll always be something I'm craving. It'll always be something I miss. And for me, one of the key things is the fact that I can do sound design, I can program, and I can do creation and design of levels, and maybe not so much in the best possible way. Looking back at some of the pictures that I created when I was younger, when I played Super Mario, they were awful. I've got memories of them and they're terrible. I don't think I'll ever be able to find them. I'm sure they've been long thrown it away in the trash and gone, which is kind of sad because they, at this point, they are probably, 30 years old. And I wonder what it was like for 10-year-old me to be drawing those pictures and have this idea of creating a game in his mind. But I love the idea of, I came from that to where I am today. And if you've played any of my games on itch.io, you'll see, yeah, they're kind of cool. I don't strive to create AAA graphics. I don't strive to create awesome games. I like indie games quite a lot, and I do consider myself an indie to some degree, but I don't go out of my way to go and publish games because I don't want to do that. I like the idea of creating games. I'm not into it for making money. You know, I could do if I wanted to, I guess, but I just don't see the hassle in that. I don't want that. I just want to make games and let people play them. That's why you'll find the games that I've made are free to play. Yes, you can download the source code to the games for a little bit of money, just kind of contribute to me as a creator. But things like Timmy and Mousy, the Demons Inside, these are free games that I've created. It's a burger eat burger world. Yes, I made a game where burgers eat burgers. Don't ask. But you know, they're all free to play because I want people to play and explore what I've done and be happy with it. My advice to you is, if you want to be a game developer in any kind of way, don't try and do what I've done. Don't try and be a programmer. Don't try and be a sound designer. Don't try and be a level developer. Don't try and be a marketer. Just focus on one specific thing. If you want to go and do everything, you know, it's fun, it's great, and it is possible because I can do it. And if I can do it, I'm sure you can do it as well. Seriously, I know you can. I'm not the smartest person on earth. I'm not fantastic. I'm just a random dude who somehow got lucky with the YouTube algorithm and ended up with a channel with 150,000 subscribers and thousands of people watching every single day. That's luck as far as I'm concerned. But I'm happy that what I've created helps people learn more and more every single day. But I think it's humbling to a degree. I think that's what I'm trying to get to. The journey I've been on to be a game developer is absolutely amazing. But there is a twist to this story. Now, I have spoken about it in the past. I used to work in the gaming industry. I don't anymore. I actually work for an international company, and I do some very important stuff, you could say. I think, maybe. To me, it's important and I like it. But I used to work in the gaming industry. I used to work for a company. I'm not going to name them, but I'm going to tell you where they're from. They're from Leamington Spa, okay? And I used to work for them for a couple of years. And, I would not advise anyone work in the gaming industry. Seriously. This company started out, for me, great. But then things set in. You notice things around, and I didn't see any form of, discrimination or harassment or bullying or anything like that. But the industry itself is very pressure related, and there is a lot on you. I cope under pressure. That's one thing I can say. I can cope very well under pressure, and that is my benefit. In fact, I would say I excel under pressure because it knows I've got to meet a deadline, or I know I've got to meet a deadline. So I work well that way. But there are so many people that left because they just couldn't cope, because of the demands of the people above. And one thing I will say is this company was stuck in the past, right? That's not good. I know some people love to hold on to the past. They need it. It's important because of their history. But you know what? Sometimes you've just got to let it go like a Disney princess. The future always changes. And I can't tell you whether it's the same now because I left many years ago at this point. I actually worked there. I actually got the job there before the pandemic, and I worked for a couple of years during the pandemic, and obviously that's long gone now. But I've since moved on, and I look back and I think I enjoyed my time there, but I didn't like it. I couldn't bring myself to cope with their demands. Like I said, I have made a video on this before, so I won't go too much into...
I'm not quite sure how to help you with that.
Yeah, me neither. Check out her there. She's trying to talk... Technology. Here's me talking about modern technology, and that it's doing that. Anyway, that's my story of how I got to where I am from playing on my Master System in 1990. Please let me know what you think. If you wouldn't mind giving this video a like, commenting, subscribing, let me know your story of how you became a game developer. And if you're not a game developer and you want to be, link to my channel is in the description, so you can go and learn. But there will be some other videos floating around now on this channel if you want to go and watch them. This is one of the more serious videos that I've done on this channel because I do kind of, go a bit silly with this channel because it's a bit of fun. But anyway, thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you in another video.